Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said, "Touch me again and I'll leave." The way she said it, flat, like a therapist delivering a boundary, made me realize she already had. Emotionally, she was gone. The words were just paperwork. It happened on a Tuesday morning at our kitchen island, both of us holding blue bottle coffee like props in a play we no longer believed in. Claire didn't even look at me when she said it. She was scrolling through Slack messages on her phone, pretending to read something important. I saw his name flash across the screen for half a second. Adam, my business partner, the man who once toasted to our brotherhood at the firm's opening. That was the moment everything inside me went silent. Not rage, not heartbreak, just silence. Architects understand that sometimes a structure doesn't collapse in noise. It just becomes uninhabitable. I didn't respond. I set my coffee down, half finished, and went upstairs to shower. In the fog mirror, I caught my reflection and realized I didn't even look surprised. Somewhere along the way, I'd been preparing for this, drawing invisible blueprints of my exit. For months, Claire had treated emotion like currency she refused to spend. Every touch was an audit, every conversation a therapy session where she played both doctor and judge. I kept trying to reach her through gestures, small things, dinners, weekends, but she interpreted them as weakness. That night, I stayed late at the office. The hum of the air conditioner was louder than the conversations I used to have with her. When I opened Slack again, her chat with Adam was still there, half hidden, but not enough. "You deserve someone who understands your mind," he'd written. "You already know that," she replied. No confrontation, no scene, just confirmation. I drove home in the Lexus NX she used to love because it was quiet enough to think. She didn't hear it pull into the driveway. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her through the living room window. She was still on her phone, the glow reflecting off her face like a screen test for someone else's movie. That night, I made a decision. If silence was the only language she respected, I'd become fluent. When she said, "Touch me again and I'll leave," she didn't realize she'd already lost her chance to say it twice. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She was already dressed when I came downstairs, her hair tied back, her tone clipped and professional. Claire could turn detachment into an art form. She mentioned a new client, a lunch at some wellness cafe, and then casually asked if I'd be at the office late again. She didn't ask out of concern. She asked because she already knew the answer. Adam would be there too. At the firm, everything looked the same but felt different. The light in the studio hit the walls in sharp angles, cold and surgical. Adam greeted me with that easy smile he used when hiding something. I didn't need proof anymore. The distance between Claire and me had already been measured in their shared glances. Still, I noticed the small things, the way his laptop screen dimmed when I walked by, the way Claire's name popped up in Slack during meetings, like a pulse that wouldn't stop flickering. I started saving copies of our joint projects in a private Dropbox folder labeled Final Drafts. It wasn't revenge. It was architecture, documenting before demolition. I knew I'd be leaving soon, and I didn't want to take chaos with me. Every design I opened felt like a record of what I'd built and what I'd ignored. The angles were perfect. The foundation was not. That week, Claire began staying out later. "Late sessions," she said. I didn't argue. I stopped asking questions that had already answered themselves. Instead, I focused on logistics, what leaving would look like, what silence would sound like when it was intentional. Friday came. Adam suggested we grab a drink to talk about new opportunities. His voice was steady, but I could hear the guilt hiding in the rhythm. I agreed. We met at a bar near downtown, the kind of place where conversations disappear under dim lights and background jazz. He talked for 10 minutes about growing the business. I watched his hands. They shook every time he mentioned Claire. I didn't confront him. I didn't need to. By the end of the night, I had already drawn the plan in my mind. How to remove myself without leaving debris. When I got home, Claire was asleep on the couch. Her phone glowed beside her, a Slack notification lighting up the room. I turned it face down and walked past her. The sound of her breathing was steady, but the house already felt abandoned. I didn't plan to look for proof, but proof has a way of finding you when you're ready to see it. On Monday, I got to the office earlier than usual. The building was still half dark, the only light coming from Adam's corner desk. His computer was open, Slack still running from the night before. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There it was. A private thread, their names side by side. Nothing explicit, but every word was charged with implication. "You ground me," she'd written. "He builds walls when he's scared." Adam replied, "Maybe it's time someone else draws the blueprint." For a moment, I couldn't move. It wasn't the betrayal that hit me. It was the predictability of it. Claire had always dissected my silence as avoidance, never as preservation. Adam simply offered her reflection disguised as empathy, and she fell for it, not out of passion, but control. I didn't delete anything. I didn't even close the tab. I just stared at the screen until the reflection of my own face blurred into the glass. Then I copied the project files from our shared drive, moved them into my Dropbox folder, and renamed it archive_complete. Every click felt like closure disguised as routine. When Adam came in, he looked surprised to see me there that early. He made small talk about deadlines, about how Claire's insights have really helped the workflow. I nodded. I kept my voice neutral, my face still. He didn't realize I had already stepped out of the partnership, at least in my mind. That night, I went home and cooked dinner for two, out of habit more than hope. Claire arrived late again, smelling like peppermint and exhaustion. She sat across from me, eating quietly, her eyes never really meeting mine. There was no tension, just distance, so clean it almost felt professional. After she went upstairs, I opened my laptop, booked an Airbnb in another city, and paid for a month up front. No message, no announcement, just a plan. My departure wouldn't be loud. It would be architectural, designed, precise. By midnight, the reservation was confirmed. The blueprint was drawn. The demolition would happen in silence. When I finally left, it didn't look like leaving. It looked like a regular Wednesday morning. Claire was in her office upstairs, doing a virtual session with a client, her calm voice drifting down the hallway like background music. I made coffee, blue bottle, like always, and set her cup beside the sink. It was still warm when I walked out the door. Everything I took fit in the back of my car. A few clothes, my sketchbooks, my MacBook, and a single framed photo from years ago. Us at the opening of our first studio. She was smiling then, proud, unaware of the cracks already forming in our foundation. I looked at that photo for a long time before sliding it into a box. Then I closed the door, locked it, and drove away. No note, no words, just absence. I rented the Airbnb 2 cities over. It was small but modern, all clean lines and quiet light, like a space waiting to be designed. I unpacked methodically, like I was assembling a new life piece by piece. The silence there wasn't heavy, it was structured. For the first time in months, I could think without her voice narrating the flaws in everything I felt. At night, I logged into Slack one last time. Messages kept coming in about deadlines, project timelines, Adam's usual, "let's sync soon." I archived the workspace, closed the laptop, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, just detachment. The kind that comes when you stop trying to fix what no longer deserves repair. The next morning, Claire called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Where are you?" followed by a second message, "You can't just disappear." I watched the screen light up and fade again, the words hanging there like a mistake she couldn't edit. For a man who'd spent his life designing structures, I realized this was the first time I'd built an exit that would actually hold. She once said I didn't know how to leave things unfinished. She was wrong. Some things are better left that way. By the end of the week, she stopped calling. But I knew it wasn't over. It was only the silence before the echo. Days turned into weeks, and silence became my new routine. I built a schedule inside it. Early runs before sunrise, coffee from a corner cafe that didn't know my name, long hours drafting in peace. Every movement felt deliberate, stripped of noise. From my Airbnb window, I could see a construction site across the street. Watching other people build something new made sense to me. Destruction had already done its job. I didn't check on the firm, but information still found me. A former client called to ask about delays. Then another. It turned out Adam had started changing things, design shortcuts, budget oversights, careless decisions. He was ambitious, but not precise. Our partnership had always been balanced by my structure. Without it, the cracks showed fast. That night, I opened my Dropbox folder labeled archive_complete. Inside were all our blueprints, contracts, and private notes, the silent skeleton of our business. I didn't plan revenge, but order has a way of revealing truth on its own. I sent one anonymous email to a longtime investor, attaching a few of Adam's unauthorized revisions. Nothing illegal, just enough to make them look closer. I didn't sign my name. I didn't have to. 2 days later, I saw a post on social media. The firm had suspended operations pending internal restructuring. A polite phrase for collapse. I didn't smile. I just closed the screen. Claire texted me that evening. I didn't know you'd left for good. Then, after a pause, Adam's been under review. They think he mishandled the partnership. Her message read like an update, not an apology. Still, I could sense the tension bleeding through her carefully chosen words. Control was slipping from her hands, and she could feel it. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Silence still said more. Before bed, I opened Google Maps, just to check if my old address was still saved. It was. But when I clicked it, the pin didn't load. Maybe the connection failed, or maybe it was something else, a system finally understanding I didn't live there anymore. Outside, the construction site lights flickered in the dark. It reminded me of what she once said, "You always need to rebuild." Maybe she was right. I just didn't tell her I'd already started, somewhere she couldn't reach. The fallout arrived faster than I expected. Within a week, word spread that Adam had been removed from the firm. Financial inconsistencies, creative disputes, investor mistrust. The same things I used to quietly protect him from were now tearing him apart in public. I didn't make a call. I didn't whisper a word. The structure simply collapsed the way it was designed to, under its own weight. Claire must have felt it too. She posted something online, a quote about losing what we take for granted. It sounded like one of her therapy slogans, polished and distant, but I could read the subtext. She was losing control, and people were noticing. Her friends, colleagues, even clients. They saw her facade starting to fracture. I wasn't watching out of bitterness. I was observing, like an architect studying the aftermath of a storm. Every building tells a story about the wind that broke it. One afternoon, while reviewing sketches at a cafe, I saw her name flash on my phone again. No message this time, just a missed call. Then another. Eventually, a voicemail. "I think we should talk." Her voice sounded different, stripped of certainty, like she was finally realizing silence isn't always weakness. I didn't respond. That night, I walked along the pier near my Airbnb. The air was cold, clean. The lights reflected on the water like 1,000 unfinished designs. I thought about how much energy I'd spent trying to explain myself to someone who never really listened. Now, absence was doing what my words never could. It was teaching her what presence had been worth. Later, I checked my inbox out of habit. There was an email from a mutual client titled Reconstruction Proposal. For a second, I laughed at the irony. They wanted me to lead a new project, alone. No partners. No shared credit. Just my name on the blueprint. I accepted before the screen dimmed. Not out of pride, but peace. The kind that comes when you stop chasing understanding and start building again. Claire used to say, "You always turn pain into structure." She said it like an accusation. She was right. I just never told her that's exactly how I survive. Weeks later, I settled into a rhythm that didn't include her name. My new studio was quiet, sunlight stretching across clean white tables, the air filled with the faint smell of fresh paint. Every day, I arrived before dawn, worked until evening, and left without saying a word to anyone. The silence that once felt heavy now felt earned. It had purpose. Then one morning, she appeared. Claire stood at the edge of the workspace like a misplaced memory. Her coat still perfect, her hair composed, but something in her expression was fractured. She didn't speak right away, just looked around, at the models, the sketches, the calm she no longer had a claim to. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she said finally. Her voice was soft, uneven. I just watched her, waiting for the rest. "I thought you just needed space," she added. The irony almost made me smile. Space was all I ever tried to give her. She stepped closer, scanning the room like she was looking for pieces of herself. "Everything feels colder without you," she said. It wasn't an apology, not yet. More like a diagnosis. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured her a cup of coffee from the pot I'd made earlier. Blue bottle, the same brand that started it all. I slid it across the table. She didn't touch it. For a while, we just stood there, surrounded by unfinished blueprints and quiet. Then she asked, "Are you happy now?" It wasn't bitterness, just confusion. Like she couldn't understand how peace could exist without her control. "I'm calm," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine, it sounded grounded. "That's better than happy." She looked down, her eyes glinting with something close to regret. But she didn't say the words. Claire never did. She turned toward the door, paused for a second, and whispered, "You rebuilt yourself." When she left, the silence didn't return, it expanded. It filled the whole studio like a steady heartbeat. For the first time, I realized she wasn't my unfinished work. I was hers, and she'd stopped building too soon. After that day, I didn't see her for a while. The studio stayed silent, the kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. It steadies you. My work took over everything. Projects multiplied, clients returned, and for the first time in years, I felt aligned with my own purpose instead of orbiting someone else's moods. But one evening, as the sun dropped behind the glass walls, I noticed her car parked outside. Claire was sitting inside, not moving, her hands on the steering wheel like she was rehearsing something. I didn't go out. I just watched from the window until she finally stepped out and walked toward the entrance. Her steps were slow, hesitant, like she was afraid of what she might find. When she came in, she didn't try to play calm. Her voice shook. "You could have called," she said. "You could have said something." I wanted to tell her that I had said everything. Through absence, through silence, through the emptiness she created and I finally honored. But I didn't. She looked around again, her eyes falling on a blueprint pinned to the wall. It was a design for a new residential complex, a project called Haven. "Is this yours?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "It feels different," she said. "Peaceful." "That's the point," I replied. Her gaze lingered on me for a moment that felt too long. I could see the realization flickering across her face, the understanding that the calm she once called detachment was actually balance. She had broken something she didn't understand, and now she was standing in front of what it had become without her. "I didn't mean for things to end like this," she whispered. "They ended the way they needed to," I said. My tone wasn't cruel, just final. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she nodded, swallowed hard, and turned away. When the door closed behind her, I exhaled, slow and steady. For years, I've been building spaces for other people to live in. Now I'd finally built one for myself. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming of her. Months passed before I saw her again. By then, the firm that once bore my name had disappeared entirely, its sign taken down, its website inactive. I heard that Adam moved to another city, chasing some new opportunity. Claire, though, stayed behind. People said she'd taken a break from her practice, that she needed time to reassess. The same phrase therapists use when they're the ones unraveling. I didn't think about her much anymore. Or maybe I did, just in quieter ways. Sometimes I'd catch myself remembering her handwriting on old project notes, or the sound of her laugh when things were still uncomplicated. But nostalgia isn't the same as longing. Nostalgia is just memory with the edges sanded down. One evening, as I was leaving the studio, I saw her standing by the entrance. No call, no warning. Just there, like the past had stepped out of shadow to test my calm. She looked different, smaller somehow. Not weaker, just honest. She said, "I went by the old office today." I waited. "It's gone," she continued. "They replaced the sign. It says closed. Reconstructed." I nodded. "Seems fitting." She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You really let it all go," she said. "Even me." For a second, her voice cracked, and the therapist disappeared. What stood there was just Claire, the woman I once built a life around, now realizing she no longer occupied its center. "I didn't let you go," I said finally. "You just stopped being somewhere I could stay." She looked at me like she wanted to remember that sentence forever. Then she whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually do it. Leave." "I didn't leave," I said. "I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected." The silence that followed was heavier than anything we'd said. She nodded slowly, eyes wet but steady, and turned to go. As she walked away, I realized something. Her leaving didn't feel like loss. It felt like completion. Some structures aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be learned from. And I'd learned enough. After that night, Claire didn't come back. No calls, no texts, no quiet messages hanging in the void. Just silence, the kind that no longer needed explaining. And for the first time, I didn't check my phone waiting for it to break. Life settled into something unrecognizable but steady. The new studio grew fast. I hired a small team, people who valued structure over ego. Every morning, I drive in before sunrise, coffee in hand, windows down. There was peace in the routine, predictable, grounding, silent. The same silence she once weaponized had become the foundation of everything I'd rebuilt. One evening, as I was leaving, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I saw your new project in the journal. It's beautiful. I always knew you'd make something lasting. No name, but I didn't need one. The way she phrased lasting gave her away. Claire always measured worth by what endured. I typed out a reply. Thank you. Then I deleted it. Some acknowledgments don't need to leave the drafts folder. Driving home, I passed by what used to be our office. The windows were boarded up, a construction notice taped to the glass. Reconstruction in progress. I stood there for a while, the same phrase echoing in my head. Reconstruction wasn't just for buildings, it was for people too. That night, I opened my Dropbox folder, the one labeled archive_complete. I scrolled through old projects, designs, photos. Every file was part of another life, one that had already served its purpose. Without hesitation, I selected them all and hit delete. The screen went blank for a second, then refreshed, clean, and empty. It felt like closing a door in a house I no longer lived in. Later, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, city lights reflecting in the glass like quiet reminders. I thought about everything she had said, about leaving, about control, about silence. In the end, she'd been right about one thing. Touch changes everything. I just learned that sometimes the strongest move isn't to hold on. It's to build something so complete, even absence can't undo it. And as the night settled over the skyline, I realized I hadn't disappeared. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected and started living where I finally was. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.